God has always been faithful to His church. God began to raise up in the 20th century, in the mid-1930s, a man by His Holy Spirit. This man led a ministry at that time that eventually became very large. It enveloped a lot of the world. Membership was all over every continent on earth. By 1958, though, Satan the devil was working overtime, because Satan the devil knew that God was providing and raising up a work. And that work was to be manifested to the whole world. Now, only certain people were going to be called, those that God was choosing. But the witness was to go out to the world. So a young man by the name of Stan Rader became a legal advisor and later on an economic advisor to the leader of that particular church organization. Unfortunately, what the leader of that church organization did not know was that Stan Rader was a 33rd degree Jewish Mason of the B'nai B'rith, which controls Freemasonry through the Illuminati all over the world. By the time this church organization was fully infiltrated into the ministry, he was sitting right next to the leader of that church organization, the right-hand man. And then, all of a sudden, another man began to infiltrate into that great church organization that did a lot of good for a lot of people and produced a lot of truth in the earth. That particular man that was now being infiltrated, and someone was going to sit right next to him, had taken over the duties of radio for that church organization. This was by now, the 1960s. So now the leader of that great church organization had an infiltrator from the Illuminati sitting next to him, and his son, who had taken over the position of radio commentator for the work, had now had one of these of the Illuminati sitting by his right hand. This particular second infiltrator just happened to be the great-grandson of the Illuminati banking firm of Kuhn Loeb International Bankers. If these two individuals could come in and divide the church, one of their men would still be sitting next to whoever took over the survivor of the church organization with all of its assets. This is how Satan is going to try to come in and destroy every church in the world. He's already infiltrated the Methodist, the Presbyterian, the United Church of Christ, and many of the large church denominations all over the world, and they've become nothing but sewing clubs. They don't preach the gospel of Jesus Christ, and they don't warn of the coming beast system and the world government anymore. Another young man was especially selected by very mysterious circumstances to enter college. Before he went to his assignment in Pasadena, California, he was transferred to Bricket Wood, England, the college campus there. His name was John Treek. He eventually became a writer for their magazine that one time had 7 million circulation. As a sophomore in college, young John Treek would write about East European communist politics with inside information that one of the editors in Pasadena, California, by the name of Dr. Hay, said that only someone on the inside of the Catholic Church who was a high-ranking Jesuit priest could have provided that information to this young Treek, who was only a sophomore in college. Treek would tour these communist countries as a tourist, even though he had little money and he came from a very poor background. While in these European countries, he would stay in the finest hotels. He would eat fabulously. He would drive expensive automobiles. In 1968, while he was in Czechoslovakia, and the college and that church organization paid for none of his expenses, he did this on his own. He was in Czechoslovakia when Russia invaded that country. he somehow, after the invasion was successful, just slipped through the lines and ended up in Budapest in a very luxurious hotel typing articles for that church's publication. Yet he had never even met one of those on the editorial staff of that magazine. Dr. Hay published his article in September of 1968 under his own name, he said, to protect John Treek from exposure while he was in those European communist countries. Young Treek flew from Budapest directly to Moscow and then on to Poland. He sat in the airplane going from Moscow to Poland next to the Archbishop of the Catholic Church of Russia. He was a week in Moscow and Leningrad before going to Poland. While in Warsaw, Poland, he met with high-ranking Catholic priests before flying on to East Berlin, Germany. Treek then flew to West Germany, where he attended the Wagner Opera Festival in Bavaria, Germany. He told his college friends that he would be standing outside in a black limo, stretch limo made in America, would pull up in front and hand him the tickets through dark windows. Furnishing these tickets to him was none other than Franz Joseph Strauss, head of Catholic Bavaria, and a very close and personal friend of Stan Rader, who was the attorney at the headquarters of that church. But you see, there was more to it than a friendship providing tickets to this individual to go to an opera. Because you see, Franz Joseph Strauss was also working as the top CIA agent in Bavaria. He was the head of the German division of the CIA for the United States government. Wild Bill Donovan is the man who started the CIA for the United States. He had Strauss and Bavarian Jesuits on the payroll for years, leading the front line against communism during the Cold War. In the 1980s, Mr. John Treek was involved in trying to get the governor of New York, Mario Cuomo, a Catholic, to run for the presidency of the United States. Treek never needed money, even though he came from a very poor background. Then suddenly, in the late 1980s, he was found studying law at Loyola Law School, which is a Jesuit university. In order to get into that school, you needed a PhD from another major university. But John Treek had a degree from a university that was not even accredited. And yet there he was, accepted into the University of the Catholic Church. This was the man who was responsible in 1969 for filing a lawsuit against that church to try to destroy it. And eventually in 1972 to 1974, the church began to crumble and its memberships began to go down the tubes. This is exactly what Satan wants to do to any church on the face of the earth that keeps the covenant of the living God. In 1994, the very right-hand man of the new leader of that church, after the founder, Mr. Herbert Armstrong, died, a Mr. Tkach Sr. sent his right-hand man in a super-secret trip to Florida. He was ushered from the airport into a super-private secret company at Coral Gables, Florida, by the name of Wackenhut. It just so happens that Wackenhut is an international security firm that keeps files on every organization on the earth for the CIA. Jesuits had infiltrated that great church by pretending to be church members, to create doctrinal changes to align that church with the coming world church under the United Nations organization. The church leaders now in that organization are taking orders outside of the church from the Jesuit order. The United Church of God, a branch that came from that organization, has also been compromised. Individuals who were also Jesuit trained and sent in to infiltrate that organization now lead the United Church of God. That's why they will not allow their membership to ever speak about Bible prophecy nor a conspiracy for world government, and they threaten them to put them out of the church if they even speak about it in private with other members. Mr. Craig Batchelor is the possible liaison between Wackenhut and these church groups. Where did I get all of this information? I got it from a printout from Wackenhut itself. The courier, the right-hand man of Mr. Tkach Sr., head of that church organization, who went there, saw it as it was being printed out. And he sent the information to me because he said there is no other church with the everlasting covenant of God being preached that will dare to expose the New World Order. So he wanted me to expose it and let people know the churches are being infiltrated for the destruction of them. Mr. Tkach's once right-hand man furnished me this report. I carried in my briefcase under lock and key at all times. Mr. Stephen Andrews left the United Church of God. He also had studied at the Jesuits' Loyola Law School. He was the infiltrator into that organization. Also another man by the name of Jeff Calkins, who was a ghostwriter for Mr. Stan Rader, who was the initial person who infiltrated that church. He also studied at Loyola under the Jesuits. When this information was brought to the attention of the leader of Global Church of God, Mr. Roderick Meredith, who had left the Worldwide, he told this right-hand man of Mr. Tkach Sr., who read the Wackenhut secret report, to be still, never to reveal anything on that report, nor discuss it with anything, because this was bigger than all the churches of God combined, and it was dangerous information. I've got a problem with that. My Bible says Jesus Christ has all power in heaven and earth. Jesus Christ said that our very job is to expose evil, and we are to be the light of the world. And so when somebody tells me, or tells this individual who supplied this report to me, never to speak of it, never to let anyone know that the churches are being infiltrated, could that be why there was a large letter sent out in one of their church publications poo-pooing any conspiracy theories and said don't speak of it in the Global Church of God anymore? I don't know. I'm just asking questions. Why is it that every church is silent when the great God says, expose evil, show my people their sins? And he says also, the testimony of Jesus is the spirit of prophecy. And if there is going to be a destruction of the church and a falling away, if people are warned in advance, they will know what's happening to them and can prevent it. But if they don't know that the Jesuits are infiltrating and taking over, then how in the world are they going to know what's happening to them? There are thousands of people sitting out there today, and they just know that their churches crumble, all the doctrines have changed, and they've turned their back upon the Bible, and they don't even know what happened. They've got to know. And God says they've got to get off the fence if they're going to remain called individuals, chosen and faithful, and are going to be in the first resurrection at the seventh trump, because the day is hastening that the seventh trump will come